As an artist of the Romanticism movement, Thomas Cole believed in the glorification and purity of nature, seeing the landscape of America as a Garden of Eden. However, in his painting series The Course of an Empire, there is little trace of the sublime, but rather an allegorical tale of a fictional civilization progressing from a primitive state to fulfillment, only to find itself in destruction and ruin in the end. There are 5 works in this series, but I will primarily focus on 2 of them, The Consummation of Empire and Desolation. Each painting is depicted at a different time of day, in correlation to the development of the civilization, beginning at dawn and ending at dusk. In the first painting, we see a cliffside prominently featured in the landscape, which remains a constant presence in each work. It begins here at its most primitive, the savage state, then continuing to the Arcadian or pastoral state, with the very beginnings of civilization. The series quickly develops to the peak of the seemingly glorious empire depicted at high noon. Rather than people coexisting with nature like the previous paintings, nature has been pressed into the role of glorifying the emperor, as he rides upon an elephant and is surrounded by florals being arranged for the celebration of his parade. They have even built structures upon the sea to disregard the need for the land alone, while the cliffside has been shoved to the sidelines in the background of this great progress. They've grown apathetic towards their deities, and instead glorify the successes of man, as there's a statue of Minerva in the background being ignored in favor of celebrating human royalty. Scholars believe that this painting series was a direct reaction to the politics of President Andrew Jackson, and his administration's view of nature as just a means to acquire wealth. He was in favor of rapid industrialization, but Cole saw this as an injustice to the Eden of America, and a path to a destruction of the country he chose to live in. To compare with modern times, Cole would be horrified to see the way governments and corporations desecrate the rainforest or allow for the pollution caused by single-use plastic. For a series about the progress of civilization, it is logical for the viewer to believe that it would end here, or perhaps continue to develop to the standards of 19th century America. Instead, Cole continues the series with the cautionary tale of what corruption and greed will bring about to society. In Destruction, the viewer sees the utter chaos and ruin of what was just a pristine and thriving civilization. His work calls attention to the arrogance of governments not believing that their country could ever suffer such a fate. But the fire of greed and corruption can catch up and explode the powder keg and leave behind nothing but ruins. When Cole was describing Desolation, he said, "The gorgeous pageant has passed. The roar of battle has ceased. The multitude has sunk into the dust. The empire is extinct." As Cole was creating this work, there was an anti-abolitionist riot in New York City that lasted a week, following mayoral election unrest. Several newspapers called these rioters multitudes, and Cole's choice to use the same word in his description of the chaos that occurred in Destruction can lead to a conclusion that the two were meant to be linked. The vantage point of Consummation of Empire and Desolation is nearly the same, as we can see from the placement of the cliffside. And the lighting of Consummation is clear and pristine, whereas Desolation is hazy. Nature is already bringing new life to conquer the development that rose and fell by the hands of mankind. A bird makes a nest on top of the column featured as the work's focal point. The sun has set on this great civilization, as it is shrouded in somber light, and it will once again rise upon the natural state seen in the first painting of the series. Cole signed Desolation in the lower right on a stone already being overgrown by vegetation, to symbolize the eventual demise of all man's works, including his own. Since much of basic human nature does not change over time, this can remain a cautionary tale relevant to any time period. Only 25 years after this was painted, America was at war with itself. And in recent years, America has seen citizens protesting the corruption and injustice of deep-seated social atrocities, as well as the apathy towards important environmental issues that are detrimental to the planet. As he created this series, Cole believed that progress for the sake of progress is inevitably self-destructive, and the natural world eventually prevails, as it once again lays claim to the ruins left behind.